And we're back. As I mentioned, our next topic is a hot one. Ever since the advent of the data lake, which we all have the Hadoop era to thank for, the functionality has continued to grow, challenging the value that data warehouses have provided for multiple decades. Many companies are choosing to move much more of their data to data lakes. And now there's this Lakehouse concept, seemingly tying together the best of both worlds. I'm so pleased to welcome Cindi Howson, the Chief Data Strategy Officer at ThoughtSpot, as the panel moderator for this engaging Oxford debate. Warehouse, Lakehouse, or Lake? And I'll let her kick it off and introduce the panelists. Welcome, Cindi.
All right, everyone. So I'm really excited to host this industry debate. I can't think of a hotter topic for Data Nova 2021. What's the best architecture going forward? Is it the data lake, the data warehouse, the data lakehouse, maybe even something we haven't yet imagined? So I'm pleased to introduce Aaron Colcord, Senior Manager, Data and Analytics from Northwestern Mutual. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you very much, Cindi.
And where are you joining us from today, Aaron?
From outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay, that nice warm place. So I won't move us to talking about the Packers again this year, but tell us, what is your position on this? What architecture do you prefer?
So I will be representing the data lake architecture for today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aaron. Let's go somewhere warmer. Greg Taylor, the Managing Director at Slalom. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
And where are you calling in from today, Greg?
I'm coming from Dallas, Texas, where it's nice and sunny and should be 65 degrees at some point.
Okay, you're killing me. We just got 3 feet of snow last week here in beautiful New Jersey, but my husband's saying, why the heck did we ever leave Houston? So Greg, what's your position of the ideal architecture?
I'll be representing the traditional data warehouse with all the new stuff that's coming.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg. And last but not least, Richard Jarvis from EMIS Healthcare, all the way from England, right, Richard?
Yeah, that's right. And we don't have dramatic weather. We just have rainy weather, I'm afraid. So, and it is raining today in the UK. So, yeah, I'm here to represent the Lakehouse architecture. So, kind of the new kid on the block, and something that we've been experimenting with for a little while over at EMIS.
Thank you for joining us. Right, so let's get right to it. I want to hear about what are the merits and the success criteria that have led each of you to take these positions. So Aaron, you tell me that the data lake was certainly a hot topic a few years ago. Why, and even the headlines were, it would be the death of the data warehouse. So tell us about your use case and why you advocate this architecture.
Certainly. Mostly it's the openness and the maturity of data lakes now. So when they first appeared, they championed openness and a whole new model with a need for a whole new technical skills to be built. But since their introduction almost a decade ago, we've only built the maturity around those tools, built more and more tools to unlock new data scenarios. And the merits of why I believe data lakes are so strong is since the arrival of data lakes, the entire data explosion and unlocking new scenarios has also taken off as well, because we're able to bring new scenarios of compute and imagine new scenarios that we were never able to do before.
Yeah, so for sure, the data explosion, I know, has been pushing a lot of data and analytics teams to come up with better ways of both storing, but as you mentioned, the compute. So Greg, what are your thoughts? I mean, the data warehouse, tried and true, more than 25 years in the industry. What are your thoughts on this? How are you handling what Aaron described, the explosion of data?
Yeah, I think we're all here trying to achieve the same thing, right? We're trying to unlock the power of data, and we're trying to get that data into the hands of every user. And it's not just our analysts and data scientists of the past. The data warehouse has been around for 25 years. It utilizes common technologies that most people are able to use. All the tool sets continue to be able to connect to data warehouses almost seamlessly. And we did see a lot of issues in the past just around the lack of elasticity, the limitations of storage, the speed of ingestions, the time to curate that data. But what we're seeing is with the advancements in cloud, a lot of those limitations are gone. If you look at the largest software IPO in history with Snowflake, right? We now have a cloud native data warehousing solution that has the ability to be elastic. The storage limitations are gone. The speed of ingestion with all the cloud technologies that surround the data warehouse are able to push that in as fast as we can consume it. So I think with a lot of the advancements in cloud technology, the data warehouse is becoming even more relevant. It doesn't mean that we still don't need any of the other ones. And then I think as data virtualization starts taking a hold, then we're going to even see like what the future possibilities of all of these things. So I think, as many have said before, like the lines between all of these technologies is just going to continue to blur. I'm just excited where it's all going to take us.
Yeah, great. So thank you for that. Greg, I would say, yeah, we all align on it's got to be for business value, that analytics is the key. But maybe it begs the question, is one design paradigm better suited for a different persona? Maybe the data lake is better for the data scientists. Maybe the data warehouse is better for the business users. Have you seen that? Or is there an ideal use case where you would say the data warehouse is the way to go?
Whenever we're talking about the need for curated information, right? That's where the data warehouse takes precedent. Our ability to interrelate data for data scientists and to curate that information just means the results of whenever we use those tools is going to be better. It doesn't mean that there's only one use case for each of the technologies, but data warehousing is going to continue to play that core end user source of information and truth.
Okay, thank you, Greg. So curated data. So Richard, you know, as many in the industry know, my husband is English, my in-laws are in the UK, very tough lockdown, but we are so grateful for the work you do in healthcare. So tell us a little bit, first off, about what's happening there, how you're using data, battling the pandemic, but why you're advocating more for the Lakehouse.
We started out about 2 years ago when we built our cloud analytics platform with a Lakehouse architecture. And actually, the pandemic has proven, in my mind, why that architecture has worked well for us. Because when we started, we weren't designing to battle a global pandemic, because in 2018, we didn't know one was coming any more than anybody else. But what we have been able to do by collecting data from tens of millions of patients and from pharmacists and researchers is to understand the spread of COVID and the impact on other diseases and people maybe not having the treatment that they would normally get, and be able to empower the NHS and other researchers to basically help patients get better quicker, improve the vaccines, understand the vaccine rollout strategies. And the number of different access patterns to the data that those different users have means that we need something very flexible, incredibly secure, and scalable when people need it to scale. Just at the weekend, we vaccinated in the UK something like 600,000 people on one day. That's a lot of data to record. It's all very sensitive, but it has to be real time. We have to be able to put it in the right people's hands so they know that information is securely ready for analysis. And so, yeah, the data really drives this pandemic and our approach to it.
Yeah, so I love that. Improving patient outcomes, such a valuable use case. And it is that speed to insight. Have you seen any limitations, or what have been the challenges with the data lakehouse?
Yeah, I mean, it does really feed on from what we've heard from the data warehouse and the data lake. It's a very large amount of data, but it has to be curated. We need to put this data from all of the raw forms, from all these different sources into one place so that it can be safely analyzed. And really that means using tools that actually data virtualization really does help us with. So we can take the hundreds of billions of records that have come in, we can process them in a data lake style approach where we might be doing something over hours, and we can insert it into something more relational, like in performance terms, or into something like Databricks' Delta Lake format, and then provide high-speed query performance for our data scientists and researchers. So in this case, where we've got structured data, but it's very large scale, actually the bringing together, which data virtualization allows us, of data lake and data warehouse type capabilities has really been very valuable.
Right. So it is, in a way, what you're describing is the best of both worlds. You're having maybe the data modeled in two different ways for different use cases, maybe messier for the data scientists and maybe curated for the masses to access and
Exactly.
analyze. Is that right?
You can tune your latency. So if you want very low latency data, you take it raw, and you can have it as soon as it's loaded, pretty much as soon as it arrives in the bucket. If you want curated data, but you're analyzing it over months, then waiting for it to be curated maybe in the next couple of hours is fine. So you get the flexibility to choose.
Okay, great, thank you. So Aaron, back to you. This sounds like, the ideal. What do you think? Are you seeing limitations with this approach, or pushback on Richard's approach?
Pushback on Richard? No, I respect his Lakehouse. I just think that once we start getting into Lakehouse, we begin to get into the problems of Greg's warehouse, which is we're getting back in the vendor lock-in, and we're beginning to step away from the ability to really open up and explore the number of tools. Now, mind you, that data lakes do introduce too many tools, and that can challenge us in the ability to be able to scope down and actually reach those actual problems because we have too many tools available to us. But that would just be my pushback on the lake houses. Once we start reintroducing the vendor lock-in, we might be stepping away from being able to actually get and explore data fully.
Yeah, so it sounds like, Aaron, your biggest concern is the vendor lock-in, not the actual idea of needing two different design paradigms based on the use cases.
That would be correct. And Lakehouse being very, very new, it still has a lot of patterns to still be worked out before we get the maturity underneath the platform. But it does have a lot of promise.
Okay, Greg, what do you think? The data warehouse is the gold standard. What do you think about what these two are describing, though?
I think I still hear them talking about using warehousing in all their solutions. So while
Yeah.
I think that the technologies complement each other, right? And I go back to how do we get it into the hands of the users? And the warehouse continues to be that easiest path for other tools to access the information.
Is it the easiest? Or let me push back. Many in the industry hoped that the data lake would be the answer to our problems of it takes, months to build a data warehouse, and data is too clean and aggregated to really help us find the true signals that are meaningful. So how do we solve for that in a data warehouse world?
So we've added a lot of additional data types that we're seeing now, and we're able to process unstructured data. With the cloud technologies and the expansion of that, it allows us to bring data in faster. It doesn't have to be as curated, just like Richard said, where we may not, there's different levels of latency requirements. We have to account for those in the data warehouse. If we're not able to move the warehouse into an agile fashion where we're developing it in agilely so that the speed of delivery of the warehouse doesn't improve, then it won't be successful. But
right.
With the adoption of cloud and agile methodologies, we're now seeing the ability to get that information in there faster.
Okay, so your point is that agile methodologies and the cloud address what have been the historical limitations of the data warehouse. Is that right?
It's helping a lot.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is the skills. And Aaron, you alluded to that a little bit, but for sure, people understand the skills required for a data warehouse, whereas the skills for a data lake are still newer, harder to find, and a data lakehouse even newer still. Richard, how are you tackling the skills limitation of these newer approaches?
Yeah, and I suppose really what we've really tried to standardize on is SQL again, because actually if you can get your tools to be accessible via SQL, then pretty much anyone can use them. And I'd maybe take issue with Aaron on the openness. All of our tools are open source. We use Parquet, we use the open source Delta Lake format, we use MySQL, and we have Presto, albeit the Starburst version. But everything that's done is views, it's create table statements, it's all of the things that people from 15, 20 years ago would have recognized as being data processing technologies. A lot of the syntax has been improved. You can do some machine learning in SQL now. You can do some really complex map reduce style things in SQL in this data virtualization world. But if you can boil your problem back down to a SQL type interface, then you open up lots of resources to be able to help analyze that data.
So you're advocating that as long as it's SQL and maybe not having to revert to MapReduce or whatever, does that fully address the vendor lock-in challenges that Aaron described?
Yeah, well, it's not just that it's SQL. I mean, I can take the files from outside of my Lakehouse and put them to another vendor or to some open source tool, and that works. I think what SQL allows us to do is to access the widest pool of talent across our business to come and either curate data, analyze the data in place, improve the performance of our data analysis, and interface with as many BI and analytics tools as possible, because in my mind, that is really where the data warehouse still has the cutting edge. Everything works with the data warehouse technologies. They work seamlessly. Power BI, Tableau, these things just work really nicely with a data warehouse, where even with the Lakehouse, they don't work as well yet. But if you're with SQL, then at least they'll work.
Right, thank you. Am I allowed to say that ThoughtSpot works with them too?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Starburst data, or should we not go there? So let's wrap up maybe with some predictions. So you've each advocated for one model. Maybe if you look ahead 2 to 5 years, what is your prediction? Will there be a convergence, or what is still the sweet spot in 2 to 5 years? Aaron?
Well, I'm going to have to admit that I think that the convergence is already occurring, and it is becoming Lakehouse.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aaron. Greg, what's your prediction?
I'll keep it short. I think, just like everyone's saying, that we are converging. The lines are blurring, and I think that's exciting for all of us. The Lakehouse, along with data virtualization, allows you to utilize the benefits of a warehouse and a lake together, so that you can start to curate this information without actually having to move it or transform it.
Okay, so you put the outer band at 5 years, not the near 2.
I did.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, and I think I agree. The Lakehouse looks like a good architecture to carry us forward. I don't think it's complete. I think there's graph databases and document databases that need to converge on this kind of architecture, so that we can answer with those kinds of performance characteristics as well. And at that point, you have a utopian platform that can do everything for you. And no one's worked that out yet. Data virtualization might be a step in the right direction, but it's not finished by any stretch.
Yeah, thank you. So utopia, Lakehouse plus graph. But indeed, you don't get to throw away technology that we've built up over really 20 years or 10 years in the case of the data lake. It takes time to innovate, but that pace of innovation certainly has accelerated. So I'll say, on behalf of the Starburst team and everyone listening, Thank you for debating this. Let's go over to a poll. Okay, so thank you everyone for responding to both those polls. There are some really interesting differences. So where do you stand today? 23% of you are primarily in the data lake. 51% of you are data warehouse, and 25.5%, so let's say 26% are already on the Lakehouse design paradigm. One of the things that I find so interesting about this, we did a similar poll this morning. So let's say skewed more heavily towards Europe, Middle East, Africa. And they were lagging only about 8% on the Lakehouse. Now, where you converge or we see some similar patterns is what do you expect the main architecture to be 2 to 3 years from now? So here we have 18% the data lake, only 13% the data warehouse. So this is kind of blowing me away. and the data Lakehouse, 68%. That is actually very consistent, a large portion of you believing the future is in the data Lakehouse with what we saw this morning. So it looks like really Richard made the case more strongly for you, despite some of these concerns about vendor lock-in. I also want to share with you, we ran a poll in both Twitter and LinkedIn leading up to Data Nova 2021. And there was a lot of back and forth that, well, is it really beyond that? Maybe concepts, different analyst firms use different terms. Is it the data fabric or the data mesh? Is that the future? We did see about 37% on LinkedIn thought it would be the data lakehouse, similar on Twitter. But then proponents, some people were more heavily skewed still towards the data warehouse. I think this is where beyond the technology, it is, as you heard from some of the panelists, it's about the skills, changing the people and changing the mindsets. So looking forward to exciting times and innovations to come. On behalf of the Starburst team and ThoughtSpot and all the Data Nova 2021 sponsors, thank you for attending. Next up, we have hybrid architectures. Have a great day, everyone.